Hello and welcome to the Route 1 Football Podcast, Episode 3. And this time we're a man down because we've had to take a bit of a sabbatical after the last one. I think the Sunderland fans needed a lot of time off with this one. Adam Gill not available today due to internet/trauma reasons. But we are joined by a Sunderland fan in Aaron Morris. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. What about yourself, Harvey?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much. And we're here with James Noble to make up the neutral end along with myself.
Hello.
All right, it's lovely to be joined by you both. And before we get started today, I do just want to give a massive shout out to a friend of ours and who's on our course at uni, Jake Adams. He's been having a tough time over the past year, but he's raised over £1,000 for the Teenage Cancer Trust in just over a day. And if you're watching this, Jake, absolutely unbelievable work, mate. We can't wait to see you again. We wish you well in your recovery. We know you're smashing it. And I enjoy this and whatever the work you're doing. I know he's got some good messages from his club Arsenal recently that's really brightened up his days. So all the best to you and just congratulations on the brilliant work that you've been doing.
Keep up the good work, mate.
Unbelievable stuff. And we are back with Sunderland Till I Die, Season 2. The Charlie Methven and Stuart Donald era of Sunderland is underway. What will we have in store for us in it? It's not great. It's not great for Sunderland fans, but we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves because we need to start with episode 1, A Role in the Renaissance. We open up with a recap of the season that has just been, relegation from the Championship, just a season after relegation from the Premier League. It's dark times at Sunderland, it seems, but at the end of the last season, the arrival of Methven and Donald seemed a positive change, and it's presented as a new dawn at the Stadium of Light, definitely. And we start off with Charlie Methven in a meeting with some sparkling red trousers on. And he likes to swear a lot. I think he likes to get his point across. Look big. But I can never take anyone wearing red trousers seriously. Honestly, I don't know about yourselves, but like even from the first couple of minutes, I just look at Charlie Methven and I feel like, there's just something not wired properly with you. Like obviously we've seen his personality evolve over the last couple of years running Sunderland. But what were your first impressions of him, Aaron?
He looked like a kid's TV host, didn't he? He looked almost like Mr. Tumble or one of them. You know what I mean? Like red chinos. It should have been left in 2011 with certain bands. You know what I mean? But personality-wise, you know what I mean? He comes across as like a vibrant guy. He seems quite likeable and stuff like that. And obviously, it's just his dress sense is a bit dross-like, but we can forgive that.
Yeah, we definitely we can if the results are provided, but we'll see if they were. And we move on from that, and Stuart Donald is reintroduced to us. He's making the point of it's his dream to own a football club, and he's chasing that dream, and he feels like he's got something that he can really work with. And again, like just positivity throughout the start. And we're reintroduced to some returning faces from the season before, such as Peter Farrer, who's your friend and mine, absolute legend of the scene. Introduced to some returning faces such as him. And then we move swiftly on to the squad section of this episode, which is basically, which I feel like a lot of this season is admin based, and it's more like financial focused than the previous season. And they look at the wages, and in 2017-18, the season relegated from the Championship, Sunderland's wage bill was 34 million for a team relegated. That's unbelievable, isn't it, James?
It's pretty, it's pretty hefty, and it's one of those where, and I mean, as you say, it's a theme throughout the whole series that they're. I mean, I think Charlie Methven uses the term business model, generally followed by an expletive, quite a lot. Just because, and the word unsustainable is used a lot as well, just because it's for the level Sunderland found themselves at. It wasn't really something that they could maintain over a number of years, and was one of the main reasons why obviously aiming to get themselves back up into the Championship. Then obviously, hopefully beyond that was so important, because it's just something where you can't really sort of the prize money and whatnot that you get in League One and things like that, and also the money you'll get through attendance isn't necessarily gonna cover that. So yeah, you really got a sense that this is still a club transitioning from being a relatively settled Premier League club, and it's quite good because it gives you a sense of the struggles that clubs who are relegated have, both in terms of potentially redundancies, but just dealing with having to change a business model or whatever to suit your means, really.
Yeah, and it's made very evident very early on that a mass clear out is needed, and a real rebuilding of the club is the aim of these new owners. And we see Didier Ndong and Jack Rodwell and the like are players that shifted on, who were on high wages and just aren't, like you say, the word sustainable was used a lot, but it's not sustainable to keep those sort of players in League One. So they were chucked off the books right away. And we are introduced to Sunderland's new manager, Jack Ross. And Jack Ross had previously, he'd only had 2 management jobs before arriving at Sunderland. Alloa Athletic was his first job, and his successors there earned him a job at St Mirren, where he earned promotion to the Scottish Premier League and won Scottish Manager of the Year. So he comes in with a bit of a reputation. I think a couple of clubs were actually after him at the time. It wasn't just Sunderland in the hunt for Jack Ross. And it seems to be a positive appointment at the time. Obviously, we know with the power of hindsight, they didn't quite work out for Ross at the Stadium of Light. But what was your initial reaction when that appointment was made, Aaron, from a Sunderland fan's perspective?
Obviously promising, mate. You know what I mean? You always get a bit excited when firstly new owners come in. Obviously you're thinking about the money straight away and what the manager's going to be able to play with. And Jack Ross seemed to have his head screwed on his shoulders. You know what I mean? He'd won promotion to the Premiership, like you say, and obviously got Manager of the Year, which is no joke. You know what I mean? It's a prestigious award. And obviously from the get-go, I don't know if you want to talk about it yet, but obviously he did start bringing in good players. You know what I mean? Like the get-go, his ethic was there to kind of improve the squad. He brought quite a lot of Scottish players in as well, didn't he? With him, from links up there, like the likes of Ali Mozturk, and was it him that got Lewis Morgan on loan? Was it?
Yeah.
Lewis Morgan, fantastic player. You know what I mean? I wish we could have kept all of them, but to be fair, mate, he took the club in the right direction from day one, to be fair. I think he was a good appointment for the time.
All right, and we move on from one entertaining bit of content to an even more entertaining bit of content. As we've already been introduced to Charlie Methven, but this is where we meet DJ CM. I think this season might have peaked too early, because I feel like this is my favourite scene in not even just season 2, but the entire show, where they're discussing in the fan engagement meeting the walkout music for what should be next season, because they've had the I forgot the name of the song, but the one that's always used on The Apprentice, right?
Oh.
Yes, that one. That's been used for years. I think it was used since the stadium opened, I think they mentioned. But Charlie's not having any of it. He wants some bounce. He wants some energy, and he just puts on a song on his computer, and he's just bouncing around his desk like, yes, this is what we need. It needs energy. It needs a fan to feel it. It needs to get up. It needs to get exciting. And everyone's just sat there looking at him like, who is this fucking nutter that's in charge of our club now? And I was mentioning it to James earlier before we started recording. There's an amazing screenshot, because if you watch it with, like, I always watch Netflix stuff with captions on, subtitles on. Like, at the end of it, one of the workers says to him, look, well, it doesn't matter what you play unless you get a new PA system. And everyone just goes silent. Charlie's looking really angry, and the caption at the bottom is just EDM continues. It's like a favourite bit in the entire show. It's so funny.
It just made a meme, didn't it?
Yeah, he just made it. It's just, honestly, it is like a David Brent Alan Partridge-esque moment, and it just feels like it was written for one of them sort of shows, but it's just genuinely what he's like for some reason. But anyway, we move on from that, and we get a couple of player reintroduction for George Honeyman, who's made the new club captain for the season, and Luca 9 is introduced to us, and he seems taken aback by the grandioseness of playing for Sunderland, having just signed from Wycombe, which is great to see for a new player at the club. And then we get to an amazing... It is a good thing to do, but it is a PR stunt, as Peter Farrer mentions. But this is actually one of my favourite bits as well. Peter Farrer just becomes a massive hypocrite and admits it himself. He's like, oh, it's just PR, this, because the seats had gone pink. So the fans had a real concern about that and wanted them replacing. So the owners said, right, we'll get everyone involved, get the players, the fans, us, we'll all go and we'll replace the seats. And Peter Farrer's just like, oh, it's a PR stunt, right? So that's all it is. They're just trying to make themselves look good. But I'm off to do it anyway with my mate. But it's a great... And then some absolute... Like, he's well-meaning, right? But this bloke just comes to Luke O'Nien and he's just going like, well, sign it in case you make it. In case you make it big in football, sign it. What's your name again? What a prick.
He just laughs at him though, doesn't he? He's like, all the lads are like, oh, he's had your pants down there, and he just, he's kind enough, you know, Luke O'Nien. He's a lovely bloke, but you can tell inside, he's just like, Jesus, mate, like, in case I make it, I'm going to be playing in front of 30,000 fans, come on. I felt a bit bad for Luke O'Nien there, but it seemed good, like, the atmosphere like around it when everyone was replacing the seat, Stuart Donald when he got there, except for when he first walked outside the ground and saw the NUFC graffiti on the side of the ground. He seemed a bit fuming that wasn't removed yet, but it did get to that. And we move on pretty much. There's just some introductions. We meet, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Juan Sartori? Sartori, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's lovely. I don't know what I don't think there was a scene in this without him smiling, and I really appreciated that. Yeah. And we're introduced to Andy Camis, who was in the last season, lifelong Sunderland supporter. And then we get a detailed watch, and we're watching it like we do a lot of games this season from the perspective of, we're watching it through Stuart Donald's eyes a lot of the time. This first game at home to Charlton, go 1-0 down through a Lyle Taylor penalty, who was a Sunderland target that summer. They don't really mention that, I don't think. Nick Barnes, not Andy, might have mentioned it during the game, but he did score, and but turned it around. Was it Josh Madger who got the equaliser? Am I remembering that right?
I believe so.
Yeah, and then Lyndon Gooch, stoppage time winner, 2-1 against Charlton, winning in stoppage time with a cross at the back post. I'm sure that's not reminiscent of things to come from the end of this season, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Robin Van Persie-esque, wasn't it? That diving header.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, I remember watching that like on telly, like brilliant header, and so that brings us to the end of episode 1, and it's just from the perspective of it, James. It just seems like the only way is up, really.
Yeah, it is a really sort of positive vibe to start with, and I think, you get the sense, and I suppose Aaron will sort of know more than me, but it did feel like that genuinely at the time. You do feel like that's not just something that's sort of put across through the magic of TV or whatever. I think there was obviously a lot of positivity around, and you could see why. Like it was justified, and I think it's just one of those where, and you've got no option but to start with that. Really, if you're new coming into a football club, you want to sort of kickstart things positively, sort of be positive about what you're going to do. And the nature of that is sort of sometimes in the long term, it does look sort of, with hindsight, it always looks sort of a bit futile or whatever, unless it does go really well. But that's just the nature of sort of life, I suppose. And yeah, I think it does feel like you're sort of witnessing a club sort of hopefully bouncing back from what they hope will prove sort of rock bottom at that point. And things do seem to sort of look more sustainable on and off the pitch. The picture looks better than sort of previous season.
Yeah, and I think it helps just how it seemed all like framed perfectly. Like after a relegation, like there can be a lot of negativity, but you're in a new league where you're expected to do well. You've got new owners, new players, a new manager, like an early kickoff, sun's out, like August day. It just seemed set up for positivity, and I feel like the way it was presented really well by Fulwell, I must say. And that optimism carries on straight into the start of the second episode. There's a bit of at first a breakdown of wages, and it's a bit like, right, we're pushing our luck a bit here. We need to manage it. But it sows the seed of that becoming a bit of a problem later on. But then it moves into all the squad looking forward to the season ahead of him. And we get introduced to lethal finisher Lee Barry Catamol. I'm sure he'd scored like 2 goals in his last like 8 seasons or something like prior to this. And then at the start of this season, he was bagging him in like prime R9. What were happening to him, Aaron?
Believe it or not, Harvey, when he was at Middlesbrough, he used to be a cam. And then obviously I swear down, and as times kind of went on, he's just kind of ended up becoming like a central defensive midfielder. He's like kind of just jumped straight back. But there was a season, I think it might have been when we were in the Premier League just before we got relegated, and he was spraying balls left, right, and John Mensah. Like, honestly, like I've never seen anything like it. Like, who is this guy? Like, where's Lee Barry that we know and love, like the late tackles and the red cards and stuff like that? Where's he went, and who is this bloke who's replaced him? But he did. I think he scored 2 goals in his whole career at Sunderland, and then I think he got another 2 or 3, maybe 4 goals at the start of this season. Obviously, as a Sunderland fan, you just love to see it.
He got a brace, didn't he? At Wimbledon, were it?
Couldn't have happened to a better bloke, if you ask me. You know what I mean? You cut him out when he bleed Sunderland. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and there's a lovely bit. I think it might be after the Wimbledon game, I want to say. But it's the players are getting back onto the coach and the fans are congratulating him. And I think he's Ballymumba. He's like getting onto the coach, and a fan says to him, and he's like, "Oh, did your GCSEs go well?" And Bally's just like, "Yeah, I got 9 of them." And I just thought that was a really lovely moment. I really liked that. And then Charlie comes out with another really Brentish line. He's like, "Well, with these 3 games, well, if you'd it's the 2 games down south with Gillingham and then here at Wimbledon on Saturday. If you'd have said 3 points, it was like, yeah, I'd take it. 4 points, yes, please. 6 points, thank you very much. Straight in the pocket, back up north." And he's like, "Shut up, mate, shut up." You could have just said 2 great results that like we're chuffed. And it's like, right, back in the pocket, back up north. And he's like, you can't sound more southern. Like he tries. But anyway, he clearly means well at this point anyway. And then we get a bit of budgeting with Stuart Donald, and we find out that a high-tech cryo chamber is at the Sunderland training ground, which a lot of clubs have nowadays for recovery-based reasons. But we find out not one of the players is using it, and the only player who's used it in the last year or so, the only person who's used it in the last year or so is Bond villain Martin Bain for his back.
The terrorist.
Oh, we'll not go back to that. But he just... How does that happen? You've got this high-tech thing. Why is that not part of your recovery plan? If you've got it, it's not going to cost you anything to use it.
Yeah.
I think it's like emblematic of how the club was run at the time, James.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say I know enough about sports science to know why it wouldn't have been used, but yeah, it is confusing. I assume, do they ever mention when they? I don't know if they ever mentioned when they got it, but I assume maybe at some point sort of within. While they're in the Premier League.
Yeah, you'd assume.
Because Defoe used to use it all the time.
Yeah, and like that's not surprising because people have always talked about him as like a model professional, and that just sort of reflects that in terms of like recovery and stuff. I know apparently Jamie Vardy absolutely loves his cryo chamber. Apparently he's got one in his house, and obviously the fact you look at how well he's performing at like 34 now, Jamie Vardy.
And I think we like his type of player as well, because it's all about his game. A lot relies on explosive pace, and to be at like in his 30s and to still have that, obviously recovery is a massive part of that. Maybe knocking vodka Red Bull in there, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, you can't go wrong when you've got wings. So it's one of those where it's just there must have been a reason behind it, and presumably it was just. Like not part of the plan, because there's programs behind that kind of thing, aren't there? Sort of, and generally they're quite individualised. But I suppose if they just sort of collectively weren't using it, then maybe they've not. But it does seem strange. Nice to know Martin Bain was able to make some use of it, though. At least I suppose that's better than nothing. But yeah, and I mean it was costing them. I don't know if I wrote the number down, but it was costing them £100,000. And I don't know if that's like in terms of maintenance as well, or just what they bought it for. Don't know exactly how they work, but yeah, it was obviously something it was quite a logical decision to obviously.
Oh yeah, bin it off if they're not using it, definitely. And we get some ominous foreshadowing of trouble that might be to come in later episodes and months down the line, as we talk about youth contracts with players, and Josh Madger is brought up, and they've said initial contact has been made. They're just having a little bit of trouble with agents at the minute. Nothing to worry about, I'm sure. Before we get, as I put it in the notes, Josh Madger skills, goals and assists compilation 2018, because that's just what it was. We just saw a load of just how good Josh Madger was in the first half of this season. Because I got the pleasure of watching a couple of games of Sunderland that season, and he just seemed like levels above any other striker in that division. And how important? Well, it shows later on, but at that time, how important, did you feel Madger was to your side, Aaron?
It's obvious, to be fair. I mean, I think we can all agree that if we kept Elder Madger, we wouldn't have still been in League One. I think we might have made it back to the Championship. You know what I mean? But it didn't really materialise, and I blame his agent personally. I know I might get a bit of stick for that, but his agent for me was looking for a big money move so he could take his bonus, and he didn't care about Sunderland. You know what I mean? But on the other hand, if Madge wanted to stay, then it's his decision. You know what I mean? So, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. But
go on. Sorry.
To be fair, mate, at the time, unbelievable. Gold dust. You couldn't give me another name in that league, and maybe even some teams in the Championship didn't have that talent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think I agree with the agent point as well. And Stuart Donald definitely agrees with the agent point, as he'd talk later on. And while we're getting the Madger compilation, we get a little snippet from the Not the Top 20 podcast boys. George Ellick and Ali Maxwell make a brief appearance. Ali doesn't say anything, but George is bigging up Madger's stats on Sky. And yeah, very nice to see them too. And hope that, well, not that they're going to watch this, but still. And then we just get a great thing for me, because Luke O'Nien seems to be getting a bit of stick at the start of the season, which makes me sad because I really like Luke O'Nien. But then I am very happy because Luke O'Nien scores, and all is right with the world again, because him and Johnny Williams are like the nicest men in football, I think, based on this documentary alone. But them two just salt of the earth, both of them. And we move on at the end of the episode. It's so funny because Josh Madger is the worst liar in the world, because he's getting interviewed, and one of the interviewers says to him, like, "Oh, have you seen the transfer room?" And he's like, "Oh, transfer room." It's like, "No, about who?" And he's just like, "Oh," he's like, "About you." And he's like, "Oh, about me? Oh, I didn't know about that. No." He's just like staring at him blank. And it reminds me of that video. Do you remember when that fast food place got done for putting cocaine in the burgers and like smuggling drugs? And then the interviewer bloke who's picking up some food from them goes, "What? No, I didn't know that. No, I never knew that. I got proper vibes of that coming off it." But yeah, that brings us to an end of episode 2, where there's a bit of foreshadowing about Sunderland's current star man maybe heading for the exit door, and we'll have to see. Yeah. And episode 3, entitled Pride, Passion and Loyalty, or as I've titled it, Admin Till I Die, because just this episode is just full of... I mean, this is what I mean where I say this series was much more based around the owners rather than because I think we got a lot of backstage stuff last season, but nowhere near as much as this season, because last season was much more about look at what's happening to this great football club on the pitch and how it's deteriorating, whereas I don't think you can do that this year, because obviously you're going to be towards the top end of the table, so it's looking at how a new owner manages a club of this size, which I think is an all right angle to take. But for some episodes like this, it's just it does get a bit much at times with the admin. But we open with a lovely little Armistice Day tribute, and the Canis family, who both served, reflecting on their wedding, and he brings comparisons to what he feels in terms of service to how he feels about Sunderland as well, which I just thought was a lovely little opening. And it shows a victory at Bradford with Lee Barry being the league's best finisher yet again, getting another goal. George Honeyman, I think, got on the score sheet as well that day. And Josh Madger lies to an old woman at Christmas, which I thought was really nice of him. because as he's signing stuff and he's doing the meet and greets, obviously he's put in a really awkward position, and I can't really blame him. But an old woman says to him, "Oh, you're going to be here next year, aren't you?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll definitely be here next year." Well, yep, mate, you'll be in France. So it's not
spoilers,
too
Harvey.
Nice.
Spoilers.
we're only like well, if we get to the end of this episode, he bleeds. But yeah, I think it was a nice little start, and with me, this might be like my most infuriating episode, I think, because we meet Sophie Ashcroft, who works in the marketing department for Sunderland, and obviously we'll get on to what happens with her later on. But what did you think of her role in this episode specifically, Aaron?
I feel like she was put under a lot of fucking pressure, to be fair. Like, seemed like a nice enough woman, you know what I mean? Seemed like she would bend over backwards for the club and for Charlie Methven and Stuart Donald, and seemed like the sort of person that we needed at Sunderland, you know what I mean? She was constantly rushing about, obviously. Didn't mean to knock my microphone there. But she was constantly just like pressured. And I thought she was good at that job, to be fair. I mean, she tell it like it was, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, obviously, like Charlie has a role to like if he wants to turn the club around, and he has got to be aggressive at some situations. But you can tell just in that meeting that they're all sat in, where he's like basically just giving him a bollocking, that everyone else is like sat there like yeah, like listening to him, and then she's just sat in the background just having none of his shit. And I just completely respect it, because I wouldn't have any of his shit either, because he just waffles like mad, and he wears red trousers, so you've just instantly lost my respect and any authority that you once had over a person. And she's just there like, well, Charlie's Charlie, and that's just like, that's a nice way of calling him a prick. Like, I really enjoyed that. But yeah, and you can see a lot of people like cringing like during that meeting as well. And but yeah, and we move on to a game that we were at, Plato, 4-2 at home to Barnsley. A really good game actually. Josh Madger showing his quality. Luke O'Neill scores again. Do you have any memories of that day?
Yeah, I mean the abiding memory is the I can't remember how many goals did Josh Madger score that night. Did he score a couple, or was it just the one? I remember the one where he chopped back onto his left and like hurled it.
Did he score the penalty?
No,
or was that McGeady or Maguire maybe?
Yeah, looks like McGeady scored penalty 19th minute, then Madger scored a minute after, which I think was that goal back onto his left. Then they go 3-0 up. Gooch scores. Barnsley get one back, two back, and then Luke O'Neill scores later on. But it was a really good game. I think we all felt pretty lucky to go in for that particular game because of how good it ended up being. But yeah, I think that goal just sort of it's great to see a goal of that quality as well, just because it really summed up just the season Josh Madger was having, and turning basically what was not really even a half chance, just with sort of fleet of foot and a bit of skill, turned it pretty easily into a clear chance and just swept it home weak foot like it was the easiest thing in the world. So yeah, that was memorable, because that really showed that Sunderland had what they had with Josh Madger.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that day you mugged off a load of proper journalists, because we were there as students and invited into the press box, and we were all nervously sat at the back during Jack Ross's post-match press conference, not wanting to intrude. And after the local and national press have had their go, he sort of put us on the spot, didn't he? And he said, "Oh, is there no questions from the students?" And we all just sat up straight away, like not knowing what to do. And Plato came out with a right question, and Jack Ross, before he actually answered it, just said, he just looked at all the actual press and just said, "God, he's had you there. Like, it's better than any question."
I didn't know about this.
Yeah. You asked him about his system. You asked him about his system, didn't you? Like adapting to change against this like attacking Barnsley side. And then he just looked at all the journalists like, "Bloody hell, it's mugged you off."
It was probably nice. It's nice for him to be able to send something back in the other direction for once, I suppose. But,
yeah.
But no, I mean, I thought it was so good with us, to be fair, because I just thought he made an effort to sort of include us, and I mean, I think we were just all sat at the back, kind of expecting just to be. I think we knew we could ask questions if we wanted to. I'm not even sure if we knew that, but I think we were just sort of expecting to watch. But to be fair to Jack Ross, he came across sort of as a guy, and in terms of man management, really, really well while
Yeah.
he was at Sunderland, and I think we could all tell that night he just came across very, very well. And of course, after a win, you're always going to be happier anyway. But yeah, he came across well that night, and it was just a good evening from the perspective of how good the game was, really.
Yeah, were you at the pre-match press conference that a few of us got to go to against before the Burton game later on in the season?
I don't think I what. No, I don't know. What time of year was that?
It'd be around early April, I want to say, because I'd been out the night before to watch WrestleMania, and I was viciously hungover. And it's the most unprofessional I've ever been in my life in like a proper. And I asked a question as well, but I barely remember what I said because I was just ambling through it with like my head pounding with like 2 hours sleep.
I think that deserves a medal. That achievement to manage to ask.
It was awful. I hope this doesn't get out to any potential employees because I won't do that if you pay me.
No,
I am very professional.
That counts. Performance under pressure in my book.
It's almost of the Fleet Street days that though, Harvey.
You what, sorry?
John was used to live in little squats and drink for 20 hours of the 24 hours a day and then began to work.
I'm old school. Like, I read in John Motson's book that like a load of them just used to like meet in the club office like after the games they were all at and just like neck like ungodly amounts of whiskey and just drive home.
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, should you be putting that in your book?
It was a different time. It was all right.
Yeah, his book, there's some proper questionable stuff in his book. Like, one time he was, like, blatantly racist on BBC, and he just tries to defend himself in his book. And I'm like, just don't mention it.
I think I remember that as well. And, I mean, kudos for the honesty, I suppose.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he did own up to it. He said, "Oh well, I wasn't aware that was that's something I shouldn't have said." But then he just tried to defend himself. I'm like, no, just leave it at that. Just say you shouldn't have said it. Just leave it at that. You don't need to defend yourself.
You were wrong. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine, Marty. But anyway, getting a bit off track there. But then we move on to like.
I don't think I was there.
No. I was just trying to remember if you were. Adam was. Adam definitely was there. Because he saw me walk in and just started laughing at me because he just noticed straight away the state I was in. But we move on to the Boxing Day marketing strategy because they're after the record. They're after the League One attendance record, which was currently set by Leeds with 38,200 in their promotion game a decade earlier. And I love the strategy here, to be fair, that one of the I think it might be, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the marketing bloke suggests.
I didn't.
It's all right if we don't have it. He's like the third main man. He always they always go to. But he just said, "Oh, we should just advertise it as beat Leeds' record." And I love that. Like I love the strategy was like, "Oh, we fucking hate Leeds. Like let's just introduce it and let's just make it us." And I love that. That's great. If you just market anything as it's to stop Leeds, I think anyone can get on board with it. To be honest, sorry to any Leeds fans that are watching, but I'm not. Sorry.
But yeah, enough approach, didn't it? Either way.
Yeah, exactly, and I love it. I think it's great, and we just get a little segment about Stuart, Donald, and Charlie just moaning about the staff, and there's like one little bit where Charlie's like, "Oh, they're leaving at 4:59," and I just think like, "Oh, come off it, you busy bastard!" Like, oh, they finish at 5 o'clock, and he's like, "They're leaving at 4:59," and it's like. Shut up, like a minute. What are they going to do in that minute that's going to drastically change the day's work? Like, if you know anyone who's like, if you've been to school when there's like 15 minutes left of school, you've already got your shit ready to go, like, or at work, like the last 10 minutes of the winding down time, or like in some cases the last like hour.
But, sorry if anyone at Parsec or Two Touch when I was there listened to this, but when we worked on the phones and it was coming to like the last minute of the day, maybe the last 10 minutes of the day, we used to just take our phones off the hook and literally not let any more calls come in because we were like, I can't be asked to be stuck on the phone to someone for an hour and a half trying to sell them gas and electricity, so I'm just going to tap my phone off the hook and you know, it's all right, isn't it?
You've just exposed the industry there, because I think that's like anyone, like customer, retail has to do like, on the phone. I feel like anyone watching is like, that's what they're doing.
People were horrible to me when I worked there, so I could not give a flying fuck.
Oh no, I couldn't. Like, I know my sister worked in like telesales for a long time, and I admiration to anyone who does it, because it just seems like hell, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's almost like the ticket office, isn't it? I suppose, because you get the sense they've there's quite a few features with them in there, aren't there, over this series, which is quite interesting to see. It's more like them interacting with Charlie, I think, but you do get the sense just how sort of intense it can get in there, especially later in the season. The two big sort of trips and stuff. I think Tony Davison, is the managing director.
That's the one. Yeah, thank you very much, Plato. Always rely on you.
That's all right, bit late.
It's fine. And we go to two key moments in the series, really. The news comes that Josh Maja has rejected the contract offer from Sunderland as the January transfer window approaches, so it looks like he's going to be on his way. But we move on to a bit more of a, well, I say it's a positive note, but it doesn't end too positively. Is the Bradford game, Boxing Day. Did they break the record? Yes, they absolutely smashed it. Over 46,000 fans in the stadium alike. An unbelievable achievement for the third division. But before the record's announced, because they're still counting the tickets, because there's a lot of them, Sophie's trying her best to get in touch and get the number with Charlie, because Charlie's not doing anything. He's just standing shouting at people. He's not on the phone to anyone. He's just having a go. And she's on the phone trying to get the number, and she just says reassuringly, like, if we get it, we'll get it, which is an inoffensive thing to say. Yeah. And I apologise to anyone who's going to be offended by this language, but he goes full on here. Oh my God, I might have to bleep that, but I don't care. Like,
Against our monetization hopes.
Oh, like that, we're going to happen anyway. Is this what's going to get pulled back if we get big in like 3 years? Like Art, you said this once, you get 10p a video. But like, no, this infuriated me the way he went off at her. It was so unnecessary. He just starts having he's like, don't talk to me like I'm a corporation, talk to me like I'm a person. Like, she's just being reassuring. Like, she's not said anything like bad, and I just didn't understand where he was coming from with this whatsoever. But yeah, and then he goes out like smiling to the crowd and stuff, and like saying like, "Oh, you made all this possible. Like, you're brilliant." He's saying, "Don't like be fake with me," but then he's gone on and been fake to 46,000 people, like a massive hypocrite. Like, I can't stand him. I just think he seems like one of the worst people to work with or work for. Well, especially to work for. And you think, oh, well, she might have got a bit of a shouted out, like that might be it. No, she gets sacked as well, which is just, it's an awful end to the
episode.
Yeah, to see her walking out of the ground with her stuff, putting it in the back of the car with the other staff helping her, kindly helping her. It's just an awful, thing to watch. She's upstairs. My dad just walked in then. I'll leave that. You're right. Yeah, but it's an awful thing to watch. But that game itself, a 1-0 win, but what the bloody hell happened with that goal that wasn't a goal for Bradford? Because obviously they're very, I'm going to bring up Hawkeye here, because they're very selective with the camera angles, I'll say. But this goes in, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. I was sitting at that match, and I was in the concourse up with the gods, and I could say that went over the line. But with that being said, it didn't get in. It didn't get all the way over the line, did it? I didn't think so.
Wait, go on, James. Sorry.
That's right. It's sort of the thing. It reminded me of it. Was the Roy Carroll one in like 2004.
Oh yes,
it was.
Stuart.
Yeah, but no, I mean, get luck, you take it, I suppose, don't you? So.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like it's a bit raw me watching this, given what happened to my beloved Blades when the Premier League returned. But this isn't about that, so I'll not mention it anymore. But yeah, the episode, even though they broke the record, they win the game. It ends on a sour note with Sophie being sacked, and I hope she's doing well. Because I know she had like a kid and everything, so I hope she's fell on her feet and found a job somewhere else that's sustainable, and he's not getting treated like shite like she clearly was by Charlie Methven. So I hope she's well. Charlie can go F himself. But,
no, because she was so tolerant, wasn't she, with a lot of those moments when would have been easy to not be.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll move on to episode 4. He's playing poker, he's called, and I think there's just two things to talk about here. One, Josh Maja leaves for 1.5 million euros.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know that. I was under the impression, I feel like someone told me and I just believed it, that they got 5 for him. And I thought that, yeah, that's about right. I'd say that's what he's worth. And then I watched this back. I must have not noticed it when I watched it the first time. It's 1.5, which is obviously just over like £1 million, only just over £1 million. That's ridiculous. Like, I know his contract's running out and everything, but that is unbelievably low. And Stuart Donald didn't know about this either, did he? Because he mentions that Jack Ross gives him a call, like angrily saying, like, you could have told me that you'd accepted an offer. And he was like, I didn't accept anything. So I don't really know how this went through, but
it's pretty mind blowing, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, a striker of his caliber going for that little. And
the thing is, though, right? They could have. It might have been different stories. Well, if they'd have just cut the losses and let them go for nout. I mean, 1.5's nout. You know what I mean? Like it is football, but it's not really going to make that much difference. Would you rather you have one of your most exciting young talents going for 1.5 million euros, which is, like I say, fuck all, or would you rather get promoted to the Championship and see them leave for nout because they're refusing to sign a new contract? You know what I mean? And as a Sunderland fan, I'd rather would have just sat and bided our time, offered him a better contract. If he didn't accept the contract, then fair crack. But at least we've got that striker there until the summer when we can find a replacement for him. You know what I mean? But no, we made the bad decision of letting him fucking go for nout.
And I think to be fair, to sort of be in defence of Sunderland here, I think it's his agent hurried a move.
Oh yeah, of course.
Because if he goes on a free, he doesn't really take anything from that, like his agent. Whereas his agent would be like, look, even if it's a small fee, get him away so I can have a bit. Like I think his agent was incredibly selfish during this process.
But the club's got the final say on that. If they've still got him under contract, you know what I mean. The club can accept or reject the offer. You know what I mean. Even if the player's pushing for it, then the club can still turn around and go, "No, you've still got 6 months left on your contract, or you're not going anywhere."
Yeah, and we move on now because, well, when Josh Maja, who has scored all these goals, has suddenly gone to Bordeaux, who do you call upon? You call upon Will Grigg. And I posted a tweet like yesterday saying it's the most painful watch it's the most painful episodes in the entire, even as a neutral, to watch because you see a man fall apart. And I think I could see his hairline moving back, like which is rich coming from me. From like I could see it through the TV screen, it happening in real time. But like the thing is, before we actually got onto Will Grigg, because they were saying, because Stuart Donald mentions that they were panicking to buy a striker. Yeah. They knew since the start of the season that this was a possibility, that Maja was probably going to leave in January. They knew. So shouldn't they have had strikers lined up? Yeah. Like I don't know about you, James, because like even like loan options, like I'm sure like even for you, like Liverpool, like Ryan Brewster, was he injured at the time or would he have been available for loan?
Last year I think he was. He'd have either just been coming back, or I feel like he was. He did have a long-term injury at one stage, so I'm not sure is the honest answer. But he wouldn't have been far off fitness either way. So he could have been a viable option. Obviously, they needed someone for immediately, didn't they? I suppose. But yeah, as you say, it's easy to say when not involved and whatnot. But it's the logical approach is, as you say, have a list of targets lined up who are viable, even not so viable options, just sort of a list of people who you know you can potentially get in touch with who are financially viable and also seem to fit the style of play, because it seemed like as time went by they realised that maybe Grigg wasn't necessarily the very best fit. But yeah, it's one of those where it was quite surprising how last minute it ended up being. Obviously, in an ideal world, they don't lose Maja, but as I say, it looked it wasn't all that remote possibility from pretty early in the season, really.
Yeah, and it's we'll get on to Grigg now, but I didn't understand that. I feel like you should have someone lined up like before this if you knew that was a possibility, but I don't know. I don't run a football club. But we'll move on to this saga because I just feel like I've got written down it's panic buying in its purest form, and it really is, because the emotions that Donald goes through here, like, just what was your thoughts with the power of hindsight, obviously, Aaron, watching this back like, as it unfolded with the money that was being spent and the constant upping of offers?
way that you know what I mean. You watch it back and you obviously see Jack Ross is saying, "Didn't get the piss took out of you." You know what I mean? Like we've got a benchmark. That's what we're going to pay for it. Like that's what we're going to pay for Will Grigg and blah blah. And then obviously they're getting. I don't know how to put this without it sounding brutal, but like they are just getting the piss took out of them. You know what I mean? Like the agent's on one side of the phone and he's saying like, "Oh, it's getting rejected, it's getting rejected," and that should be it. Just find somebody else, anybody else. Go and get fucking Adam the Fondry. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. But no, we end up splashing out all this money on fucking Will Grigg, who's done out. You know what I mean? Like he was all glitters and gold and like talked up was like League One's top scorer ever and blah blah blah. But come to Sunderland, he done fuck all. You know what I mean? I don't know if it was a confidence thing or what, but
Well, you signed him injured.
Hey?
You signed him injured.
Oh, I know, and that seems like a bit of an ongoing story, doesn't it? Like, look, Charlie White signed him and he was injured, and then he came back from injury and he got injured straight away because of that bad tackle from a goalkeeper. But you know what I mean? Like, it just should never have happened. You know what I mean? Like, what did we pay for him? 3.5 million, was it, or something like that? 3 million?
Yeah, fees rising to 3.5, I think.
Yeah, like 3.5 million for someone who scored maybe two, 3 goals for us since he's been here. It's not great, is it?
No, definitely not. And like it's brought up later on because our uni is involved as Donald and Methven appear on the Roker Report podcast, and their question saying that, well, Josh Madger was great with his back to goal and could hold off plays and could bring in play, link up, and then get in the box. That's not how Will Grigg plays. Will Grigg's a poacher. Like, Will Grigg is, like, you need to create him chances, like, in the 18-yard box, and that's where he'll thrive. And he did get some of those chances, but, like, he's right with what he says. The Will Grigg didn't fit that style of play. Like, Jack Ross might have mentioned, like, oh, yeah, Will Grigg will be all right. But Donald makes it seem on this interview that he was the number one target. And I think when on that phone call, Jack Ross makes it clear that, like, look, like, if you don't get him, don't pay any more than you've already offered. And that's when he's only offered, like, what, $1 million?
Yeah.
Like $1.25 million, and he said he's not even worth that, I don't think. So I feel like they might have chucked Ross under the bus a bit there by saying that, like, oh, look, he was the man Jack Ross wanted, so we went and got him. Yeah. Whereas it was clearly just, and it was evident, it was just Donald getting sucked. It showed inexperience. He showed massive inexperience because he got sucked into the deadline day trap of you need a player. Clubs know you'll need a player, so they try and milk you for everything. And he completely fell for it, and he really, really shouldn't have done it. He said earlier in the episode, I hate being on the wrong end of a deal. And that was after the Madger thing. And then he's on the wrong end of a deal at the end of the episode as well. Yeah. So he's sort of not done himself any favours. And we just get shown in like a kit printing thing that Grant Ledbetter had signed as well. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that happened. But Ledbetter's there, which is nice. And to be fair, I think I've summed it up here because I'm obviously just writing notes down as I watched it back. And I just wrote £3 million sterling. I wrote down and I just couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it at all. Because he's gone against everyone. Even his advisors are like telling him, and like the rest of the committee are just no, stop. He's not worth it. We've not got him. We'll see what we can do with what we've got at disposal. And he completely ignores everyone. And yeah, what were your thoughts on his little meltdown, I suppose, James?
It's just you do feel for him because I think you can see where he was coming from. So I think he just wanted to get someone in and get something done because it does the nature of sort of both of our mindsets, I suppose, but our society kind of is. We generally feel better if sort of feel like we've been relatively productive. And I suppose if they hadn't got anyone in, they felt like maybe they could have done more or something. But obviously they're in a position where they either don't get him or they're very much on the wrong end of the deal. As you say, you get sort of milked for sort of everything that you have. And I mean, to be fair, I think is sort of the advisors in the room at that sort of stage say, I mean, it's his money, so to be fair to him, he's sort of making a sort of personal commitment of sorts. And I think he knew it would lift the fans as well, which you can see it does. But obviously, there's still that concern amongst the supporters as well that it is a lot of money, and fortunately, it doesn't doesn't look now, and it didn't really look on the end of the season like it was money well spent. But you could understand it, but it's just it is the trap, as you say.
Yeah, definitely. And we do see him scoring. He scores a penalty in the Gillingham game to get himself off the mark after missing a few chances against Blackpool in a couple of games prior. But he does get off the mark with a victory, and that's how the episode ends. And we move on to episode 5, which is Time for Men. And I know I went on a bit of a rant in the last podcast about the editing. I think that was my biggest gripe with season 1. And I will give them full credit. They completely fixed that in season 2. Because even if it was from the game, it wasn't noticeable at all. It was nowhere near as blatant. But I actually think they didn't do it at all. And if they did, seamless, looked really well. Congrats to you for that full well. But my biggest gripe with season 2 is the start of episode 5. Because fuck this. Like, we get a leave means leave rally in Sunderland. Because yes, Sunderland was the biggest leave majority in the country in the EU referendum in 2016. But what has this got to do with football? Like, we see Nigel Farage piss off. I don't want to see that prick on my screen when I want to watch a documentary about Sunderland Football Club. He's got nothing to do with Sunderland Football Club. Get him off my screen. I don't care if it's for half a second, for a millisecond. Like, look, even if he's like a head in the stand, like put a dot over him. I just don't want to see him. Like, and all this, like, and Peter Farrell, like, I know it's like Peter Farrell, he probably took people there in his taxi. That's probably why he was there. And he's saying that, like, well, I don't agree with it and stuff. But, and then he just said, oh, but it's like Sunderland likes divided. And he's like, it's such a weak comparison. And you can tell they've got him there, like, full well, and just said, just make any comparison you can between Brexit and Sunderland. And you just think, piss off. Like, who wanted to see this? It was so pointless. It wasn't followed up on. It wasn't like, it just got me really annoyed. And I just think that, like, I don't know if they were trying to capitalise, like, I don't think, but even, like, by the time this come out, what April 2020, like, Brexit, obviously it's still an issue, but it's very much on the back burner of things in the world at the minute. And I got really annoyed with it. And because I actually really like this episode overall, but the start of it's the worst thing in the entire series, I think, for me, this opening, because it was completely irrelevant, wasn't needed. Fuck off, Nigel Farage. Like, I can't put it any simpler than that. And I don't know if you two have got any thoughts on it, but I just thought I'd get that off my chest.
Double take, to be fair. I didn't even fucking realise what was going on. Like, obviously, he's like standing in some doorway, and when they're all getting off the bus and stuff like that. And like, I seen like a brief like split second of him, and I was like, "Is that fucking Nigel Farage? Like, what's he doing in this documentary?" And then like, obviously, I texted my mate straight away. I was just like, "Is Nigel Farage in like STID?" And they just get, "Aye." I was like, "What?" But we're all just as confused as each other, to be fair. Like, you know what I mean? It was just like, why? I know it was in London and stuff like that, but like, still, like, what was the point in that millisecond of filler clip? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If not to get people talking, but
like, because he was there, because yeah, that thing did happen in Sunderland, like that march. But like, why include it? Like, it's nothing to do with like why not include like any stuff that goes on in Sunderland and just try and make a daft comparison? Like, it's just completely irrelevant, and I feel like they were just trying to capitalise on something that wasn't even worth capitalising on. But yeah, and we'll move on to the positives in this episode, because I actually do really like this episode, because it focuses a lot on the EFL trophy and all the Checkers trophy, which is now the leasing.com trophy. I want to say it's had like more sponsors than anything I kind of think of. Yeah, that's what it used to be. Yeah,
names at Carling Cup. I don't know the amount of names. That wasn't
that
the
was
Cup,
that was a League Cup.
League Cup, but still, it's had more names than I've had from enemies over the years. You know what I mean? Like, it's a bit daft. Like,
that must be a lot then. But we get. I like the positive spin that's put on this tournament, because I actually it's called the Tin Pot Cup a lot, and I understand why people call it that. But like, if you're in it, like for a lot of clubs, maybe not for Sunderland because they are used to being in higher divisions, but for a lot of like clubs in League One and League Two, they're not going to get a chance to get to Wembley a lot, and it's a cup competition. It's a chance to win a trophy, have something in your cabinet. I really like it, and they don't play it down in this documentary. I think they play it to exactly what it is. Like they show the derby that isn't a derby against the Newcastle under-21s, which I think it was a sort of a lose-lose that for Sunderland, because if you win it, then all the mags are going to be like, oh, well done, you've beat our kids with your first team and you're getting it big ends. But if you lose it, then Jesus, I don't think there's any coming back from that, really.
No.
But yeah, you won it as you should, and move on, and it's just basically campaign towards Wembley is the theme behind this episode. And we meet Ian and Michelle, and Ian gets a Sunderland Till I Die tattoo, which he definitely rang them up and was like, "I'm getting a tattoo. Can you put me on the programme?" That was my day. They seem lovely anyway, but yeah, and they win at Bristol Rovers 2-0 in the semi-final, which gets them, and which is the first time I encountered on Twitter the phrase "cheesy chips on Wembley Way," which I quite enjoyed when it confirmed they were going to the finals to face Portsmouth, and I was very happy with that. And then I will just mention this a little bit actually. There's a meeting where they're talking about ticketing for the cup final, and they say, and someone quite friendly suggests, "Oh, what about for people who don't have season tickets but have been to EFL trophy games this season? Is there a way we can get them tickets quicker?" And Charlie just says, "I like that idea, but I want to get back to mine because mine's not about making money."
Yeah.
Such an arsehole.
It did seem like I can't claim to be any kind of expert on finances and stuff, but yeah, it did seem like a reasonable and sort of sensible suggestion. And at the same time, you can see where Charlie's coming from because he wants.
Yeah.
Because I think he says the way he phrases it at the end is sort of it could end up paying for half of Will Grigg or something, doesn't he? But so there's obviously
sell out anyway. Like there's no need to shout down him. But where is he on my screen? Is he there? Yeah, there we go.
No, it was just one of those where it felt like it could have been given more consideration than it was.
Yeah.
And one bit I'll praise Fulwell for this actually, because they're doing like a big photo op at the training ground with holding up the Chesterfield "We're going to Wembley" sign. Someone who's filmed this has filmed it and gone, "Netflix aren't going to notice this. Can we sneak this in?" Because they're doing the photo shoot, and Max Power thinks it's really funny. Just get his tackle out and just like have it out, and then the ribbon pulled away and it's just there in full view.
Little Maxi Power.
Yeah, the little Max Powerhouse was on full display for everyone to see. I just feel like the person who was like filming that was just like, who was editing was just like, "We've got to squeeze this in. Like they won't notice surely if we leave it for 2 seconds." I think it's hilarious. Like I think this has a lot of funny moments this season, intentional or not, and that was definitely an intentional one. And then we get to the weekend of the final, and they get off the train in London, and they're getting greeted by the fans. It's like fantastic at King's Cross, and then like there's this like teenage lad, like he looks about like 18 or so, just offering all the players a beer, and I think that's got to be like an undercover mag trying to get them like things like Spike shit and trying to get them pissed up so they lose, or an undercover Portsmouth fan with a really convincing northeast accent. But yeah, and it just looks unbelievable. Like the scenes the night before at Covent Garden, and everyone's just having like the time of their life. And did you go, Aaron?
No, mate, I was unfortunately working. Couldn't get tickets. Firstly, and that's why I was all for the checker trade ticket thing that wife he was on about, or that bloke he was on about, because I went to a couple of the games building up, you know what I mean? I went to the Manchester City under-21s, and I went to
that game.
Yeah, I went to one of the other ones, I can't remember what it was. But it would have been nice to have been able to like use them tickets to kind of get like show like, I've been supporting through this tournament, you know what I mean, and literally get tickets to Wembley. But I haven't got points, I haven't got a season ticket, you know what I mean, so I was never gonna be able to do it. Like I was gutted though, watching all the videos on Twitter and all the pictures that you're seeing on Facebook and stuff, and it just looked electric, like looked sick.
Yeah, it looks unbelievable. And we get to the game itself, the atmosphere is really built up, everyone seems really excited for it, and for about a good 60 minutes, I remember watching this game in my flat. I was thinking about going out for it, but I decided against it, and it was just all Sunderland for the first 60 minutes. Like Aidan McGeady scores a brilliant, slightly deflected, but still brilliant free kick, and the crowd goes up. And I feel like the owners mention it, and I think they're right when they say Jack Ross failed to adapt in the second half because Portsmouth completely changed their approach. Gareth Evans came on and completely changed that game for... Is it Gareth? I think his name's Gareth. Gareth Evans came on for Portsmouth and completely changed the game for him with his basic creativity. And Sunderland, I think, where the problem was a lot that season, go 1-0 up and just hope that you can protect it. But if they change anything, don't change to adapt, just be compact. And in League One, that's always a really risky way to play because obviously your defenders aren't going to be at the highest calibre and there's always going to be a mistake in them. and it comes with Nathan Thompson equalising from an Evans cross at the back post, forcing extra time. And when I was watching it, I don't know about you, but I felt that like when it went to extra time, like it was only going to be Portsmouth winning it.
Yeah.
And because I feel like the life had been drained out of the Sunderland team at this point. But then we just get some of the most mental final few minutes you'll see at Wembley with Jamal Lowe scoring an unbelievable goal. Like it takes it down brilliantly and lobs McLaughlin in front of the Portsmouth fans, and it seems confirmed that they're going to be winning the trophy. But right at the death, Aidan McGeady, often the saviour after Josh Madge's exit, came up and provided what he does and finished in absolute bedlam in the Sunderland end. And I've just put here, when it goes to penalties, I just feel really sorry for Catmull.
Yeah.
The only player to miss, like the elder statesman of that Sunderland squad. And he's been so brilliant like throughout this season, like really consistent, like good in front of goal, ironically enough, before missing this penalty, because it's like it's one of those classic. I'm going to sound cliche here, but it was a good height for the keeper.
Yeah,
So.
Perfect. He telegraphed the penalty as well. He opened his body up and it showed exactly where he was going. But at least he stepped up to take one. You know what I mean? George Honeyman was nowhere in sight. Club captain, nowhere in sight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's disappointing. I think all Portsmouth penalties were pretty well placed, weren't they, James?
Yeah, it's one of those where it's just the cruel nature of penalties, and it's not a hot take, but it does it individualises a team sport basically very briefly. Well, in some ways, I mean, in fairness, I think everyone, like coaches, players, they make an effort to make sure it's not that way, because at the end of the day, it's obviously not as simple as that. But yeah, I think McLaughlin, he gets a decent amount on at least one of them. And yeah, but obviously, unfortunately, doesn't prove quite enough. But I think it was a good reflection on Sunderland that they actually got the equaliser late on. Obviously, it's a bit of composure in a very sort of crowded penalty area from McGeady. But I mean, they had every reason just to be out for the count really once Lowe put Portsmouth in front, because, as he said, it felt like all the momentum was in Portsmouth's corner. And they managed to sort of somehow force penalties, which I think was quite impressive. But yeah, obviously then in some ways it almost just becomes more demoralising, because you get there and then you get knocked back again. But yeah, so it was, and you did really feel for all the fans with sort of the Wembley record in recent years and everything, and it is gut wrenching in that kind of scenario as a football fan, really.
Yeah, and just a bit that honestly it really nearly got me. Like emotionally was Joyce at the end of this episode, the chef who was in the stands, and she says that like she never watches them because she can't bear it, but she watched them this game, and she was crying and she was saying, I just hate it because I know they're all really good lads and they all tried so hard and they deserve it. And when you know them on a personal level, it does seem to hit that bit harder. And just her reaction, it was really emotional, and it takes us in to the final episode of season 2, which is Football is Life. And is it onwards and upwards? We'll find out. And we start off with the priest, who was. I think it's the first time we see him in this season.
Father Mark Lynham Smith.
Oh, we got his name finally. Oh. We didn't have him last time, but well done to you for getting that. Yeah, he gives a nice speech, but to be honest, I'm not a religious person. It's fine if you are. I've got no problem with whatever they've got, but just like, it didn't really do anything for me, this, but hopefully it did for some people. So people got enjoyment out of it, fair enough to them.
Yeah.
And it moves on to probably the most mental game of the season. 5-4 at home to Coventry. Yeah, what happened here? Like, it's the first home loss of the season. And you've been so defensively solid.
When fucking what's he called got a red card because he kicked one of their players.
Not Oviedo.
Oviedo?
Yeah.
I don't think I remember that match. It wasn't that one, but I can't.
It was against Coventry, wasn't it?
When was it?
Or was it Peterborough? That?
Wait, I think it was Peterborough.
Peterborough.
Yeah, I think it was. I think you're right there. But yeah, this Coventry game is just ridiculous. We don't see the full scoring, but I remember like being in my flat, like watching Soccer Saturday, and just seeing the goals just like flood through, and I was, what is going on? And then a bit of a calamity for the winner, where Baldwin like misses the ball, and Chaplin, it's a great finish from Chaplin to be fair, like gets out his feet and just smashes it into the roof of the net. But you just think as a Sunderland fan, like, how is this happening? But even after that game, you're 2 points behind Barnsley with a game in hand. So it seems that promotion is very much still on. But at the end of the season is for a team that was like really known to not lose, because I think you'd only lost like 2 games this season up to that point, but you'd just drawn far too many. Like that was the problem. 1-1 was like it was a meme at that point that like Sunderland are playing, so it's gonna be 1-1. Well, I think the odds might have been at like evens in like some games for a 1-1 draw, and 1-1 is exactly the result you get at home to Portsmouth, despite taking the league. Tom Flanagan, who I was happy for when he scored, because there's a little interview with him before. He talks about how he was just in Tesco and some bloke just starts coming up and abusing him, which is just bang out of order. Because, like, imagine if Tom Flanagan just turned up at that bloke's work and just saying, "Oh, you're doing shite, this isn't good enough." Like, he'd chin him, wouldn't he? Like, you wouldn't.
I think that's one of the most feels like one of the most significant moments of the series, almost, just because it does sort of give you an impression of how difficult it can be, sort of being a footballer in certain scenarios for all the firms.
Yeah. Congratulations to Flanagan, by the way. He's just signed a new deal with the club. When we're talking in real time, it looked like he was going to go to Coventry, but he has signed a new deal with the Black Cats and will be with them next season. So good luck to him there. And yeah, he scores against Portsmouth, but Jamal Lowe there again, 1-1, and then last minute loss to Joey Barton's Fleetwood away from home. Pretty much confirms that playoffs. Oh, it doesn't show, but the Sunderland also lose their final game of the season to Southend, which keeps Southend up. That victory. So that's how the season came to a close, and a very negative. And we get a little piece of Stuart Donald's wife, who is just. It shows how much like owning a football club takes a toll on family life as well, because she's really not happy with how things are going and how it's affecting Stuart. And you have it's not an argument, a discussion, and she makes him look like a right mug, to be honest, because he says like, well, ask the children, like they love that I own Sunderland. If you ask the children, like, if you want me to own Sunderland's club, they'd say yeah. And she just goes, well, if you ask the kid if he wanted to live in a sweet shop, they'd say yeah. It doesn't mean it's good. and just say like, got a point. Like, cause I think, and she makes the point that like, well, if you were just a supporter of the club and you still went to the games and you took them to the games, they'd still love that. Like, you don't have to be the owner, which is, I think, completely true, completely fair. But I think he's like, he almost into the same point as falling into the trap with Grigg. He's into it now. He's sort of got himself so far deep that he doesn't want to come up. But it's interesting to see that dynamic, because obviously in the first season, like I said, this is more admin based, but we didn't get to see that with like the likes of Martin Bain. It was just what they did at work, and that was it. But we'll go on to the playoffs, and huge win at home to Portsmouth. I think there was a thing with marketing here as well, only 26,000, but I think it's one of the stupidest rules in the EFL, by the way, the ticket in for the playoffs. It's ridiculous that the season ticket holders have to buy a separate ticket for the home leg of the playoffs. I think that's so daft. But I don't see why that should be the case. Like for Wembley, fair enough if you get through. Like, I know it's an
part of the season at the end of the day, isn't it?
It's still part of the season. Like I don't understand it, but it's a great victory. Maguire scores a brilliant volley. Absolutely thumps it top bins, and Ali Turk gets it. They don't really show as many angles here, because here it actually does look like a bit of a red card. But I remember watching the game, and it was never a red. Like, he completely got the ball, and Evans went over dramatically, and Ali tried to fight him basically after, and rightly so, because it was an awful decision. But Sunderland managed to see it out. Were you there that day? Either of you?
Yes. Yeah, I was in pretty much. Wasn't far from the end where Osbert got the red, actually, but it did kind of. He's going away from goal, really, isn't he? Like, I know he's sort of going towards the penalty area, but yeah, you could see why it gets rescinded, doesn't it?
Yeah. And he gets the ball. It's not like replays show that he got the ball before Evans, he took the ball cleanly, so it was never a red card.
No, so and I mean Sunderland do well to ride it out, but yeah, it's one of the more sort of confusing decisions sort of we come across over the course of 2 series, definitely.
Yeah, and we go on to a phrase that I don't usually use, but a brilliant 0-0 draw, like from Sunderland. You get Stuart Donald in the stand, like with his kids, and he's just as stressed as any normal fan would be in that sort of situation. Like McLaughlin pulls off an unbelievable save in this game with his feet. I remember watching this in the pub, and it was like the atmosphere was really good just in the pub. So I can't even imagine what it was like at Fratton Park at the time. And they don't show the Luke O'Nien incident, which I find quite surprising. I don't know if like any like
them. I hope he's watching this as well. You're a fucking prick. Like, how dare you assault Luke O'Nien? Like, do you know what it's like? I imagine Luke O'Nien's like the Plato of like Sunderland football team. Like, whereas Plato of like Sunderland uni seconds for people who are watching don't know. Like, if anyone gans in on Plato and tries to hurt Plato, literally everyone on the team literally surrounds that person and whacks the life hell. I imagine Luke O'Nien's like, that's what. How dare he like kick out at Luke O'Nien while he's like in the stands, like being pushed out? You know what I mean? It's like, it's a joke.
State of him as well. I don't like to be someone who just like takes piss out people for the way they like look or dress, but the state of him.
Honourable man, like.
Yeah, and like it's not as even if Luke O'Nien like intentionally did it. He just fell over the thing, and because it's so close to the pitch and like Fratton Park's at such a low level, like right in front of him, and he just boots him and stuff. And all the fans are like, obviously it's their own, but all the fans are like sticking up for that fella, and you just think like, no, he's a prick. Like, get him gone.
Pot noodle fringes sitting next to him and all, aren't
they? Yeah.
It was just sort of grim on so many levels. Like I think and it was one of those where when sort of we were all watching it at the time, you can tell it's not one of those you have to look back. You can just tell it's bad. And as you say, you go off that pitch at any kind of pace on the side, chances are you're probably going to end up in the stand, aren't you? And yeah. And I mean, again, sort of well done Luke O'Nien for not reacting. So, I mean, he just sort of showed. I can't remember him reacting anyway. I can't.
No, he just laughed at him. Like, he just started laughing at him.
Just, I mean, amazing that he was able to keep his cool, to be honest, and that just reflects what we saw of him, doesn't it? Really, he just came across so well through all of it, and to be able to just sort of deal with that and get on with it without making a huge fuss.
Yeah, and if you've been to Independent in Sunderland since that day, you'll notice that man is immortalised on the mural. He replaced the old Donald Trump mural that was there, and now it's that Southend, Portsmouth fan. Don't know why I said Southend.
Sloth. We'll just call him Sloth.
Sloth. Yeah, appropriate, I think. But yeah, a great result, and Sunderland are off to Wembley for the second time this season, hoping for a better outcome. It was arguably worse. As again, just mass on mass go down to London, take over the city, and obviously you've got and Charlton, a London club, and reminiscing on, I want to say, was it 99 or was it 2000, the Championship playoff final? It might have even been 98 with
I think it was 98. Yeah.
Clive Mendonca hat-trick, and Mickey Gray missing the penalty that saw Charlton promoted and Sunderland remain. And one of the kit man is saying that, look, I keep this up because it reminds me, like, I don't want to feel like that again. And God, I feel so sorry for him. But we move on to the game, and just a ridiculous own goal. I remember this actually really well, because we were both at the Forge, James, and you were leaving that day. Yeah. And you lived in the flat below me, so I said, the game's just started, and I came down, I gave you a hug, said goodbye and that, and I went back upstairs, saw what had happened, and I ran down, and I was like, James, Sunderland are winning.
I feel guilty for making you miss this moment of like craziness, just because it was just, I remember you said, and then I think you sent me the, I'm guessing it was a link from Sky or something on Twitter. Yeah. It's just like, oh my, and I think you just put underneath it, like, oh my, it was just
I couldn't believe it. So I was reading Twitter, like, not having seen the goal, saying like, oh, these Netflix scripts are getting ridiculous now. And I just think it's such an odd goal, and for like that level, and well, last night we saw an odd playoff final goal with Joe Bryan catching the keeper out from 35 yards, but this was weirder. Like, it's just a routine pass back to the goalkeeper, and there's a bit of a miscommunication. Saar doesn't really look where he's passing it. I think it's Phillips in the Charlton goal, I think, and he's a bit too left, and he has to like scramble, and he just can't get it in time, and it just trickles in, and you just see the Charlton fans behind there just watching like, oh my God, what am I seeing? Oh. But yeah, Sunderland are given an unbelievable slice of luck to take the lead, and Sunderland do as Sunderland does, and protected that 1-0 lead. Obviously, there was an unfortunate injury to Max Power, but I remember watching this game, and Sunderland never looked like scoring.
No, we didn't.
Charlton had quite a lot of attacking intent, and Sunderland was struggling to cope with it because they had players. You have like Lyle Taylor up front, and if he's there, and obviously later on we'll talk about who they brought on. But yeah, they get an equaliser. Ben Purrington scoring just before half time, 1-1. So obviously nerves are setting in. You don't know what's going to happen. And to be fair, the second half was tense, and I think Sunderland defended well for the majority of the second half, but again, never looked really like creating anything up the pitch. And then Johnny Williams comes on, star of season 1. Again, one of my favourite players in football, just as a person. He just seems brilliant, seems so down to earth. And he changes the game completely, like picks the ball up on the left countless times, causing Sunderland absolute havoc. And eventually a ball comes into I don't think him that plays it, but a ball comes into the back post, and it's bobbled around. Flanagan makes just a elastic block. It's quite unfortunate for him because he just does try to stab it away when the ball comes in, but unfortunately for him, he stabs it right into Patrick Bauer, who has tap-in, essentially, in the dying minutes of added time. And Charlton win 2-1, and it's heartbreak at Wembley for Sunderland yet again. And it's just, you feel, I don't want to say it's the Netflix curse, but you just feel like if this wasn't recorded, do you reckon they would have? Obviously, that's just
nah.
Nah.
I think it's Wembley, mate. I think Wembley's just a horrible, horrible place that no one should ever visit. Like,
it's just horrible chance, though, isn't it? That you've had like two heartbreaking finals documented. Like in
three times I've watched my team play at Wembley now, City being the first time in my lifetime, you know what I mean, in the cup final, and then obviously Pompey and Charlton, and 3 times I've seen my team lose, and it's like, if I never had to go back to that fucking stadium again, I'll be a happy man. Like,
honestly, I'm in the exact same boat as you, because I've been to Wembley to watch us 3 times, and we've lost 3 times.
Yeah,
there's nothing worse than losing in a playoff final.
It just killed me vibe as well. Like I was watching that one at work again, on my phone underneath the fucking desk. I was working in the bookies, and my manager came in. And he's a Borough fan, and obviously he had live notifications through on his phone, didn't he? He was just going, "Oh, there's been a goal," and I was like, "What?" Like, because it hasn't came through on my stream yet. And he's getting, "Sunderland just scored in the dying minutes." I was getting, "Fuck off!" So I started like jumping all over the place, and he was getting, Charlton, really. And like I was just like sat there looking at him with my phone in my hand, and I was getting tapping the piss, and he was like, "Don't throw your phone, don't throw your phone." I was getting Michael, I would fucking punch it all. I was like, and then it was the day of This Is Tomorrow in Newcastle as well. So obviously straight after that, I was going through to see Stereophonics, and I just wanted to go home. I felt hollow inside. Just wanted to go home, lie in bed for like 3 or 4 days, but inside I go and watch Stereophonics and like have a shit time. To be fair, like it was such a buzzkill.
Even if you're not there, like it can ruin like stuff. Except obviously in the first Route 1 football podcast, I spoke to Diggy Critchley of Football Daily, big Sunderland fan, and he was visiting family in New York at the time. He told me, and that like he just said it ruined it, like it ruined his holiday. And it does. Like I've only had the experience of being there when my team loses like a massive game like that, so I can only imagine like what it's like when you're not there. I don't know how to compare the experience, but like I remember for like the biggest comparison I can make of it was our League One playoff final against Huddersfield. It was like one of the longest penalty shootouts in playoff history. It got down to the goalkeepers. Their keeper puts it top bins, to be fair, like a brilliant penalty. They'd missed their first 3 penalties, by the way, and we still lost. And Steve Simonson steps up and puts it into orbit, and it didn't hit, like the raw like feeling of it didn't hit for like a long time. Like I remember being sat there at first just like not feeling anything for like about 5 minutes, and then as we were leaving the stadium, I was just overcome, and what have I just seen?
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking. And like the title of the episode is "Football is Life," and to a lot of people it is, especially in working class areas like Sunderland, like here in Sheffield, like Liverpool, like so many areas, Newcastle as well. Like there's so many areas of this country where football is everything to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's just to see that happen to your side twice in a season. It's just I can only imagine what they're having to comprehend emotionally. And it's just there's a visual. It's a really good visual of just Stuart Donald. Like he has to clap them because the trophy lift's happening right in front of him, and the trophy goes up, and he's just there so begrudgingly, but you can tell like he's hurting so much. And I think you can throw a lot of criticisms at Stuart Donald, and a lot of them would be very valid. But I think he always cared, and he always wanted the best. I think he was in over his head a lot, but he always had like the passion that you want someone who's in charge of your football club to have, but his decision making a lot of the time wasn't ideal, especially. And we move on to just it's the end of the season, so it's an empty, but it just feels like a downtrodden like Academy of Light when the kit man again just he said he's still not over it. He couldn't comprehend how they lost that game.
He's putting his new photo up next to Clive Mendonk now.
Yeah, he said he'd never been more confident about a game in his life, and I thought, you're a brave man. I could never be confident for a playoff final. I'm not confident in any football game, but I suppose. And well, these two, obviously, again in hindsight, unfortunate quotes to end the season and the series, because I don't think there's going to be a season 3. So it's Charlie says that next season we have to win the title and win it convincingly. Sunderland, of course, with stuff out of their hands because of coronavirus and the points per game. Yeah, finished outside the playoffs, but I think if it was played out of how tight that league was, you would have probably got the playoffs. I don't think you'd have got top 2, but I think you'd have got the playoffs because it looked like Parkinson was turning it around. And Stuart Donald says, "I won't outstay my welcome," and that quote's been used against him a lot now by Sunderland fans who have said, "Right, you have, and we'd like you to go now, please." And to his credit, he's looking at buyers. So hopefully there's someone who can come in and do what Donald and Methven wanted to do but were unsuccessful. But just wanted to get your two thoughts on the series overall. Start you, James.
Really sort of good overall in terms of, obviously not good in terms of like outcome, sort of in terms of raw results and stuff like that. Like you really do sort of you want to see Sunderland do well because of the people, because of how brilliant sort of the people throughout Sunderland largely are, and how much they care and everything, and that is reflected by a lot of that's reflected by Methven and Donald sort of talking about sort of their experiences coming into the city as people from sort of outsiders, to use the term, and but I think on the whole it's just really, really well done in terms of how it's put across so many different elements of it, how sort of football is life is a good sort of episode title to end on, because of how much it's sort of a mood setter and mood killer, potentially, football. And it puts across so many different elements so well, both on the pitch, sort of in the boardroom, how it affects day-to-day life, and it is generally warts and all, which you obviously don't want there to be too many warts, but that's what you want from a documentary. You don't want too much sort of glossing over certain things. I'm sure there were things that were glossed over, but I think it's generally viewed as one of the better football and sports documentaries going sort of over recent years, because they seem to be becoming increasingly popular.
Yeah, definitely. Aaron, what do you think?
I put together much better than the first season, you know what I mean? Like from a viewer's point, like from the neutral, like you see, the editing was a lot cleaner. They weren't using old fucking footage, which was completely unrelatable to the games that they were talking about and stuff like that. As a fan's perspective, fucking horrible to watch. Much worse than the first season. But I mean, from a football fans, like outside of the Sunderland region's perspective, class, because you get to see how football clubs run, you get to see the emotion and the raw like truth that goes into what like a club needs to be done right, what's done wrong, you know what I mean? And obviously it was like kind of the first of its kind to really show you the business side of it. I mean, you had All or Nothing from City and you had the Dortmund one and stuff like that, but they didn't really go into much detail of like the club's owners. It was more just the managers and stuff like that. So to get like both like sides of that, you know what I mean, where you get like an owner's perspective and you get a manager's perspective and you talk to all the players and stuff like that, you know what I mean? It's like, it is the perfect football documentary, you know what I mean? Like, not results wise, not outcome wise, but for viewership and stuff like that, 10 out of 10, like.
Yeah, I can only agree. I think it's the best football documentary I've ever watched. Both seasons. I think personally I prefer to watch the first season because I just feel like that's more to the football side of things, and that might be. And I do enjoy all the backroom stuff and the conversations and that, but I feel like there was more focus on like players and people within the club a lot more rather than the owners in the first season, which I preferred. But it's still, second season's a fantastic watch for the neutral. Obviously a painful watch for any Sunderland fan with the stuff that went on in the season, but it's a fascinating insight to what goes on at a big club that's struggling. And I just think it's an excellent documentary. It's a shame there won't be a season 3, but it's understandable, and I think it whets the appetite for more because obviously the Leeds one has come out since, and we're all eagerly awaiting. I think Tottenham's All or Nothing on Amazon, which should be very interesting, and we might touch on a later date. But that's it for now. So I'd like to thank you, James, for joining me.
Thank you very much.
And Aaron as well. Thank you.
Pleasure as always, Harvey, mate.
And thank you for watching and listening, and we hope to see you next time. Have a good one.